There we go. All right, so I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. This meeting will take place partially remotely pursuant to the law signed by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021, an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which includes an extension until April 1st, 2022, of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting will also be recorded. And first on, after the call to order, first on our agenda is our student representatives, so we will welcome,
We'll take a call
roll
to
call attendance. We'll start in the Zoom room. Nancy?
Nancy Scott, present.
Sharon?
Sharon Stout, present.
Tina?
Tina Games, present.
Terry?
Terry Russell, present.
And Meredith Henderson, I am present. Now we will invite our student representative, Charlotte Blute, up for her report.
Good evening, Monomoy School Committee, and thank you for having me again. Since the last time I saw you, a lot of important events and exciting milestones have taken place at Monomoy Regional High School. To start off the month, the high school opened the doors to parents and guardians of students on October 4th for the curriculum night. The National Honor Society members were present, helping guide parents to the classrooms. There was a great turnout of parents and guardians interested in learning about the academic lives of their students. The Monomoy Culture Club was able to raise over $1,300 during their Helping Haiti Week, where students and faculty donated money to those in Haiti struggling from the devastating effects of the earthquake. Kira Ferris, a Monomoy Regional High School senior, was named a commended student in the National Merit Scholarship for 2022. The principal was presented a letter for Kira's amazing academic achievements. Student Council has been selling flags for vets, where students are able to purchase a flag and dedicate it to a veteran or a current member of the military. The flags will be placed on the field by the main flagpole in front of the high school next month in honor of Veterans Day. All donations will go to helping the veterans. The class of 2022 is holding their annual Holiday Wreath fundraiser, which will last until early November in order to raise money for the senior class's prom and senior trip. Last week, the students and faculty were very excited to welcome back Homecoming Week. The Spirit Club worked hard to set up and put on a Spirit Week, outdoor pep rally, and homecoming dance under the tent. The entire school is participating and excited for the traditions to continue in a COVID-safe fashion. Students dress up every day in different themes to show off their school pride. The annual Powder Puff game was held on the 13th, where the senior and junior girls faced off in a game of flag football. A pep rally was held on the 15th by the Peer Leads class and the Peer Leads class and Spirit Club on the turf, where every student was invited to join the festivities. Although the football team lost, the stands were packed on Friday the 15th with students from every grade. On Saturday the 16th, the front field was lit up under the tent for the homecoming dance for all students in grades 9 through 12, and there was an amazing turnout. We are very grateful for everyone who helped make Homecoming Week a special and fun time. The girls' soccer team had their senior night on the home turf on October 19th with a great win against Rising Tide. The boys' soccer team takes on Sturgis West tonight for their senior night on the turf. The field hockey team will have their senior night game on Wednesday, October 27th against Plymouth North. The boys' golf team finished their season on the 18th at the state South Sectional Tournament at Foxborough Country Club. The Monomoy All Sports Booster Club held their annual golf tournament fundraiser at the Ridge Club on October 11th to help raise money for the sports teams and athletic programs. The September Scholar Athletes of the Month were Sabrina Morand, senior captain of the cheer team, and Grady Howell, senior captain of the boys golf team. It was a good month to be a Shark. Thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all next month. Have a great night.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Charlotte? Tina?
No comments. Thank you as always. And I was following the social media for Homecoming Week, and it just looked like so much fun.
It was, yes,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And having the dance outside under a tent.
It was good, yeah, and so many students were there, which was awesome that everyone was able to go.
Good, good. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon?
Yes, I commend your comprehensive report there, and I couldn't quite hear what Tina said, but are there pictures or videos or anything displayed anywhere to see what was going on at homecoming?
I think there were some pictures posted on the school's Twitter accounts. I think the athletic Twitter account as well as the school Twitter account posted some. I know each grade also has social media accounts. I run the social media account for my grade, and I posted a lot of pictures of people's theme day outfits and stuff like that throughout the week. So there were some photos posted.
Could you hear her, Sharon?
Can Nancy hear? Nancy, can you hear? Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, mine was unstable or something, I don't know why, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thanks, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
You too, thank you.
Next up on the agenda is public comment. Anyone for public?
Approval of minutes.
The approval of the minutes. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from October 7th?
So moved.
Second?
I would second that.
And a roll call vote.
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
I abstain.
Okay. Sharon?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Now, public comment. Is anyone here for public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, moving on to reports and discussion, and the first up is our first reading of the 2021-2022 Superintendent Goals. Dr. Carpenter?
So in your packet are my goals that I shared with the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, and we had gone over it over the course of 2 meetings. The first is there's 2 professional practice goals. The first is a continuation of something that I was doing last year, which was sort of expanding the number of parent superintendent, community meetings that we would have. We had one just before school started. We'll have one in November, later in November, one in February, and then one in late April before our town meetings. But a lot of these are really to help assuage a lot of the concerns and anxiety I think that folks are having with regard to COVID, but also to talk about things that we want to move forward post-COVID in terms of both our strategic plan that we're closing out and one to come, and also having conversations with our faculty as well. The second is to participate in some professional development for my own. I've been doing different sorts of equity professional developments throughout my career, and I wanted to just make sure that I'm up and current on things. So I have signed up to take a course in December and to sort of report back from that course with the admin team, and also bring it back here to the school committee. I'll be taking the course through a program that the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents has been developing with the IDEAS program. So the course I'll be taking is one that's specifically for school administrators on supporting culturally proficient classrooms in schools. In terms of a student learning goal, there's 2 of those. One is to support Mark and the 2 elementary principals with the implementation of the new ARC, American Reading Company English Language Arts curriculum that we put in place this past year. or this present year, by conducting walkthroughs with the principals and and Mark Smith, our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, to assess the quality and fidelity of the rollout of the new curriculum. On the other side is a student learning goal to support the high school's implementation of MAP assessments, which MAP is being the measures of academic performance testing. We do that kindergarten through grade 7. We'll be implementing that at the high school this year, and I want to be working with the high school to support the administration's use of it and to support our staff in their forming of data teams to look at the data and have data inform instruction. In terms of district improvement goals, we're at this time where we're closing out a strategic plan this year. So we have the strategic plan that's been in place for the last several years that is slated to end at the end of this year. So so one is to move this current strategic plan forward as we close it out. The second part of this is to support the school committee and in one of their goals, which is developing the new 2022 strategic plan with the administration. So it's two sides of the strategic plan, one closing out the current one and the other to set the stage for the development of the next plan. And the process for that one is largely reviewing the method that we went about in developing the last strategic plan. I've suggested to Mark Smith that we do a presentation at our next school committee meeting to sort of review publicly, that process, and we can kind of set that stage, and then from there, I think it would be good if we schedule a couple working groups with the administration and school committee to start to brainstorm. It's probably more effective to brainstorm at a working group than at a public school committee meeting. What we want to see the composition of the work groups to be, and then hopefully then get that work group together to come up with a sort of a timeline on and process for the development of the new plan. But I think the first thing should really be just that review, and I think it can happen as early as our next meeting. So those are the goals in a nutshell.
Okay. Any discussion, questions, comments? Terry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Scott. A couple of questions on student learning goal number 2. So we're moving, which is, I think it's been a real plus. So we're moving from elementary, middle up to the high school, and training will take place. And I collaboratively analyzed fall MAP data. At some point, I suppose, once you get that data with a level of understanding, you'll share that with the school committee. And the second one, I think it's a natural fit, whatever that data says, to slide the issues of solutions into the PALCs. I know going back several years, we had a couple of years where we were hunting to see what's the best use of that time on a regular basis throughout the year. There was this to me is a natural fit. So thank you.
Tina?
Yeah, just going back to the working group for the strategic plan. So it sounds, I just want to confirm, so the admin and school committee is what you're proposing for that?
So I'm not proposing that as the working group. I'm suggesting that we come together to talk
Okay.
the composition of the working group,
Okay.
how many, who, but I think also in those meetings it could be, just providing some guidance in terms of what is the vision that the committee sees, what about the last go-rounds formation worked, what would we like to see enhanced, besides having more lobster rolls, which apparently went like that at the public forum.
Okay, so with that, I guess my question would be, in that meeting, are we thinking the whole school committee, or do we just want to have a representative of each town? I mean, how are we thinking we might do that?
For the work?
For what you're, not with the, for the school and the school committee and the administration to get together. Do you want the whole school committee, or?
I think it might make sense to have the whole group. I think there can be sort of a sharing in terms of what we have been working on for the strategic plan, where we're at. I think there's a lot of sharing that can take place, but also I think there's a need to just bat around. I think it took a while to come to consensus on what the working group would look like for the last strategic plan. How many school committee members, how many teachers, how many, and I think those take some time, and I think if we just have 2 representatives from the school committee, we might not get everybody's voice accounted for, and at the end of the day, the recommendation on what that work group is going to be needs to come back to a public session that we're presenting out, and so
Okay.
I think best to work through some of the logistics.
Okay, because I was just trying, where I was going with these questions is it sounds to me like it's what we might call a workshop, right? So
Yep.
I guess we're looking at putting another workshop on our agenda, of which it will technically be a public meeting for the school committee members, but, so that's what I was just trying to get clarification. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Nancy?
So first off, I think you guys did a really great job. I know that the way that it's laid out, it's supposed to kind of connect the superintendent to the schools, the public, and then also the school committee. But I feel like over the years, we've seen so many different goals. And I think these it's just a really nice blanket of goals across all aspects. I mean, you have a goal specifically to the elementary schools, into the middle school with the curriculum, and then the high school with the map, and then the relationship with the school committee with the strategic goals, and then a professional goal for yourself, and then also the community connection. So I think those are really powerful goals. So I appreciate them. Just a quick question on student learning goal number 2. It's under actions, it says collaboratively analyze fall map data and work with administrative team and facilitate forming. And then it stops. So I was just wondering what you're facilitating forming.
Oh, it's the data team, sorry.
Okay. Okay, but I think these look great, thank you.
Any other questions? Terry?
More of a comment, and I think, I agree, I think the total group of members of the committee should have a kind of a first glance as to where we've been, and then move from there into what that next step would be. On that next step, my thought, and I have not studied the success rate of all the strategic goals in the past 4 years, but if we were to take the attitude of how much effort's been put in to bring a first grade through middle school math program 3 or 4 years ago, I may be wrong, it may be elementary, and then last year committed serious money towards the reading program. I wonder, and I know I'm simplifying a strategic plan, but if one were to focus on those 2 areas and find out what type of growth through mapping in the analysis in the next year have we seen because of whatever efforts we've all made, and rather have 10 or 15 strategic plans, right now I'd be kind of leaning towards the fact of focusing in on academic growth for our kids based on investment of money and training for the staff, and find out that's a neutral. find out that in fact there are pockets of growth that we have seen, most especially because of what we've just been through in the last year and a half, with a certain percentage of kids staying at home and then rotating back in. So it may, that's just my thought even before we begin.
I think, Terry, along that lines, one of the reasons why I very deliberately had Mark come in at the back end of what was otherwise, I think, a very good MCAS report was to talk about the warts of the MCAS. I actually think if we want to look at how to move Monomoy the most forward, I think we have to. I think we really have to look at the warts of the MCAS data, and because I have, as a father, not a superintendent here, I could not be more pleased with the outcomes that my children have had at Monomoy. And I also know from the warts in our MCAS data that not every child has had the same success. And there are certain children, and socioeconomics has a lot to do with it in our communities, that are not seeing the same gains, and that we as a school and as a larger community need to address it. And I think if we can move those that are performing least well forward, we'll see everybody, we'll see the whole system leap, I think, the highest.
Tina?
And just following on that vein, I mean, the professional practice goal number 2, I just, again, want to applaud you for really making that a goal and continuing to make it a goal. And with Mark's equity task force, I mean, this to me is just so important. So I'm very happy that you continue to educate yourself and everyone else and really expand in this area. So thank you.
Anything else? All right, so that was our first reading, so then it will come back again to the next meeting for our second reading. All right, moving on to fiscal year 2022, first quarter finance report. Michael?
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
So, with your papers, I circulated reports on our revenue and expenditure through to the end of September this year. Just broadly speaking, our revenue is just kind of right around where we would expect it. There were a couple of areas I highlighted. At this moment, school choice is down a little bit by like around $30,000. However, school choice varies throughout the year and will be adjusted by the state as we go. So we might find it gets back in line with where it was last year, but we'll keep it under review. Meanwhile, circuit breaker payments are up by around almost the same amount. That is fixed, though. That doesn't change. So that's based on last year's expenditure, so we already know what that was, so that's settled. And then there are a couple of other areas, not huge parts of our budget, but interest on and from our bank accounts, and also Medicaid expenditure, which have been both kind of lagging recently and continue to do so. They don't have a huge impact on our overall budget, but we'll keep them under review. And then on expenditure, we're a really healthy position in expenditure. We are below where we were at the same point in the last few years. Although it seems like teacher salaries are very close to exactly where we should be. And it's just other expenditure, particularly around supplies and contracted services, which has just been a bit slower to get going this year. I think as we've come back from COVID and getting back into the swing of things. And there's also delays in shipments and everything that slow down some of our purchases, but I expect that will pick up in the coming months. Any questions on the revenue and expenditure? So, and then I do have, as explained in that note and also in a separate memo, some budget transfers to request approval from the school committee for. So under the new policy, or the updated budget policy, I make transfers within major accounts, and I have included a copy of them. But it's like small stuff, like $100 from one spot or another, but it's all within, or even more, but within the same major account. So like all within teacher salaries or all within operations and maintenance. However, there are a few areas where I'm requesting to transfer funds between those groups, between those major accounts, because something's happened that's changed how we want to spend the money. So, for example, lane changes is a good one. So we budget some amount of money for staff who change lanes on the contract. Most of the time that stays within the same major account because it's all teacher salaries, but there are some staff who are out with teacher salaries even though they are on Unit A. So when we need to make the adjustment for their lane change, it moves outside that major account and between major accounts. And then the other areas, one is about moving copier toner budget to the right place. The other is for out of district tuition. So some students who are receiving out of district tuition, they receive additional services. So like OT, occupational therapy or BCBA services, which are strictly speaking not tuition or those types of services. So we have to transfer the funds from the tuition major account to the appropriate contracted service. And then the last two were positions which we have raised before and which we have added this year. One is the out of district and the early childhood team chair position, and we have made a slight increase to our nursing FTE in response to COVID and the ongoing requiring for particular in testing that's required this year. And both of those have been funded from savings and a surplus we have right now in out of district tuition. So any questions about those budget transfers or anything I've covered?
I guess not.
It's pretty exciting stuff,
You
I know.
Very detailed.
You were very clear. All right. So moving on, which I believe is again you.
Yeah, although, pardon. So do we do the vote at the end? Is that, sorry, hold on, I'm being prompted. Yeah, well, so I have a motion to approve those budget transfers. Can we do that now, or do you want to do it at the end?
No, that's fine. I thought that.
There's two votes. One for the budget transfer
Yes,
and
okay.
one for the next agenda.
The next one. Okay. May I have a motion? Tina?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the FY22 Q1 budget transfers as listed in the document provided to the school committee this evening.
I have a second.
I would second that.
Okay, and roll call vote.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? Nancy?
Aye.
Sharon?
Abstain.
Tina?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I am an aye.
Thank you.
And then the next agenda item is the approval to rescind unissued bonds.
So this comes back to the borrowing for the high school project. So the way the project worked was, and this is following the Massachusetts School Building Authority guidelines, is that school committee had to authorize borrowing for the entire estimated budget for the project. However, the actual borrowing the district had to do was based on what the actual costs were for the project and taking account of the grant that we received from the MSBA. So the MSBA at that point knows they're going to give you or is planning to give you the grant, but they still want you to go out and borrow for the entire amount, or to authorize to borrow for the whole amount. So we did that. But now that the project's finished, or the project's finished, although we're continuing to pay the debt, the amount that the school committee authorized, but we didn't actually borrow, can now be rescinded. So you can take away your authorization because we didn't need to go to borrow that much. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a motion and some background in your packet.
So do I have a motion Tina?
I'd like to make a motion that the $34,076,685 unissued balance of the $701,185 authorized to be borrowed by the vote of the committee on July 16th, 2012, to pay costs of constructing a new regional high school is hereby rescinded and no further force or effect.
Second?
I'd second that.
Any discussion?
Only July 16th, 2012 was a great night.
I'm sure it was, yeah.
I was
bet it
throwing
was.
my hand up there. Yeah, I remember that band, very,
Yeah.
All right, so roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Terry?
aye.
And I'm an aye.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. So moving on to the next agenda item, we wanted to share in public meeting that Joseph Osceola, one of our members from Chatham, has resigned effectively yesterday, October 20th. And so the process has begun to fill the vacancy, and according to our regional agreement, any vacancy occurring on the Regional District School Committee for any cause shall be filled by the local Board of Selectmen and the remaining Regional District School Committee members from the town where the vacancy occurs. The members of the Board of Selectmen shall meet in joint session with the remaining members of the Regional School District Committee from the town where the vacancy occurs. A majority vote of the members of this joint session shall be required to fill the vacant position. Such replacement shall serve until the next annual town election. At the next annual election, a person will be elected to serve the balance of the unexpired term, if any, which had become vacant. Any questions or discussion? Tina?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to, just for the public and anybody that might be interested, it's an interview process. So the Chatham Select Board and then the school committee members from Chatham, which would be Nancy, Jackie, and Danielle, would be part of the interview committee. This is how I first joined the school committee, so I'm very, very familiar with this process. So I think I would just say to anybody in the public that's interested, I think you have to, I guess the announcement has gone out already. Is that, did they just go to the town clerk? I'm just trying to remember if anybody's interested. I'm trying to recall how I did this now.
It goes to the clerk and
Okay.
the town advertises
Right,
the
okay.
opening on the board.
Right, okay, and then you would respond. So, yeah, I just wanted to clarify, just for anybody listening that might be interested in this position. It's like a job interview, basically. And I also want to just clarify, too, that, which Meredith did say, but I just wanted to clarify it for the audience, is, so it runs through the end, like May, whenever the elections would be in Chatham, and then if you're like what you're doing, you do have to run for an actual election. So it just isn't automatic. I think that gets confusing for people too. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Nancy?
Yeah, just to echo what Tina was saying, there should be the talent form on the Town of Chatham website that you can fill out and submit your interest in application or however it's framed. And that way it'll go to the town, and then after a certain amount of time, which we'll have to work out with the selectmen or the select board in Chatham as to how long they want to leave the application process open before we have the joint meeting with the select board and the remaining members. And just for clarification, sorry, I have a frog in my throat tonight, so a little scratchy. Joe's term was up at the end of this year, so anybody who does apply and is put in the position, they would be running for a brand new 3-year term starting in May at the town elections. So
Thank you.
that's all. Thank you.
And
Tina.
just one other comment, again, just for the listening audience, this is a public interview, so I just want to let people know that too, that this interview takes place in the public setting, so it's not like you go into an office, you know. So when I said job interview, I just didn't want to confuse anyone. It is a public interview.
Okay, so moving on to our subcommittee representatives and liaison reports, and we have the policy file EBCFA face coverings, and it's listed as a first reading. Do we have any discussion? Tina?
Actually, yeah, I'll present this on behalf of the policy subcommittee. So, and I noticed in our packet this evening, so there was some confusion, in all honesty, with the subcommittee. We kind of felt that this qualified as a second reading, and I think, and that's the way it had been submitted. So in your packet is what we would have had for a second reading. And I understand that there was a couple of questions about that, which brought it back to a first reading. So I just wanted to let everybody know that normally you would have a redlined copy. The line, the subcommittee discussed, the only line that we removed from the original copy was in, if you're looking at your page, face coverings requirement number 1. At the end of that was an additional sentence, face coverings must also be worn when outside, hold on, face coverings must be worn outside when social distancing cannot be observed. We had a discussion in our meeting, and I can't recall if this was September 23rd meeting or October 7th, but we had a discussion, and it was recommended that the policy subcommittee take a look at that sentence again and have a discussion about it, and kind of in that happening, per CDC guidance actually was coming out about the same time, making a recommendation that that could be removed, that you didn't have to wear face coverings. So I think there was some confusion with the subcommittee acting with CDC guidance. Did this really qualify for a first reading again, since we were basically just acting on CDC guidance and removing a line? So I'm just going to throw that out to everyone. I know, and just let you decide what you want to do with it. Do we need to take this as a second reading if it was CDC guidance?
Okay, well, Nancy?
So my opinion is that if you make any substantive changes, so any additions or deletions, it needs to be taken as a first reading. My opinion is that when you have if this was going to be our second reading, the only changes that could have been made from the previous policy were grammatical. So since even though it's guidance from somebody, it still was a substantive change to what was presented at our last meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
Carrie?
But just a clarification, I happened to attend a soccer game last week and sat in the bleachers, and there was a good little turnout, and absent were any masks. And I wonder if this statement, which Tina, you brought up, and my memory of 2 weeks ago, it wasn't clear where it says on school grounds, by all individuals in school buildings, on school grounds, and on school transportation. If that means on school grounds, then would it cover all of the friends and parents, including the players? And if I would note, this year, at least the soccer girls and boys teams, I noticed, were playing without masks. So my recommendation would be, I agree with Nancy, that why don't we put the whole thing off as a first reading and then look at that on school grounds to determine, is that what we want, let's stay with high school for the moment, to happen during sports seasons? If it is, it's contrary to what I happen to observe.
Scott?
I'll just share my 2 cents. I was encouraging that we remove the line for they wearing the masks outside, which is consistent with where CDC is, where DESI is, and it would put us as a school district, I think, in an awkward position of going to a soccer game or a football game and saying, okay, everybody, you need to go out to your cars and go get masks, when at all the other similar venues in the state, that's not being required, nor is MIA suggesting that that's needed. And as one of the folks that would have to be the one enforcing it at a football game, you could imagine I think it's been working well, and we haven't been seeing these outdoor sporting events where we have people together as clusters of transmission. So I think it's a safe thing to do, and doesn't put us in some sort of untenable enforcing masks outside.
Tina?
My only question would be, taking what Terry had said, it sounds like it's working well, but I guess my thought is what if somebody questions it, like Terry or anybody that goes to a game, and our policy, until we approve this, our policy still says face coverings must also be worn outside when social distancing cannot be observed. So I guess my concern, and we were talking about this in the policy subcommittee, is what would happen if somebody did say, hey, they weren't 6 feet apart or whatever. I guess that's kind of, we were talking and thinking, well, CDC's already done this, maybe we can just go ahead and move it ahead, just because it's just that one line. So that's kind of where the subcommittee was. So I just put that out there.
Nancy?
So I'm not sure, maybe I'm misunderstanding. And under the face covering requirements, number 1 says that a face covering needs to be on even when social distancing is observed. And then number 4 says, additionally, face masks will not be required when appropriate social distancing is enforced. So those actually contradict each other. So even if they're being enforced, you still have to wear one, but except for number 4, you don't. And then I also agree with what Dr. Carpenter was saying. I attended the football game on Friday, and clusters of people are sitting separately other than the student section, but nobody was wearing a mask, or very few, I should say. There were a couple people wearing masks. So I would hate to be in the position of enforcing people wearing masks. They're on school grounds, and that policy states that they should be wearing one at that point. So I have concerns there.
Tina?
All right, so this is interesting. So and thank you, Nancy. I don't know why the subcommittee didn't see that, but you bring up something good. So I guess my proposal, since we're still in discussion at the moment, in number 1 would just be to mark out on school grounds. Mm-hmm. If you just cross that out, just leave it alone, and that way, number 1 stays with school buildings and school transportation, and then that allows number 4 while outside. So that would, I think, clear that up. So we are, so with that proposal, I would just say that we're going to cross out 3 words in addition to that additional line that I read earlier. So,
Sharon?
I remember hearing something about that school masks were being worn when kids were outside, not in a gym class, but that some classes are being done outside. So it's hard to do these policies when I'm not clear with what exactly is being done inside and outside. Like, I agree with what everyone's saying. The inside seems clear. The outside is not so clear. I think maybe what we're saying is just not at all outside, but if we are planning to do classes or something, I'm just questioning if we're covering this.
I see Miss McGuire with her hand up. Melissa, can you enlighten us?
Yes, I think what happened is when we went back to the policy subcommittee and reviewed the piece about being outside and not requiring the mask, what happened is we didn't go up to number one and then, take that also out, even when social distancing is observed, because the exceptions are below, which, included 4, where it was when appropriate social distancing is enforced. That is what kind of contradicts it. So I think when we went back to talk about removing that one sentence, that original sentence, we forgot to go up to number 1 and take it out there as well. So that's why it contradicts that. We were so focused on that one sentence, we didn't actually go back up. So that's just an error when we were trying to solidify the piece about outdoors.
Thank you, Melissa. Nancy?
So if I'm understanding, putting together what Tina was just suggesting and what Melissa was saying, that if we leave the policy as is and remove the 3 words on school grounds, so that number 1 just states, a face covering that covers the nose and mouth must be worn by all individuals in school buildings and on school transportation, even when social distancing is observed. That's number 1. And then everything else stays the same. That to me is getting what I think the problem was on the last one.
Terry?
I agree with Melissa as well as Nancy too. I think that's the solution. And if it means we can move it to a second reading and solve it, I think that's a smooth thing. As I read this a second time, I think maybe the confusion also was raised because other than the word parents in item 3, everything else sort of speaks to the kids. I raised the issue of parents and grandparents, attendees at sporting events. It would include them, and that's what we shared, what some of us have seen at the games. And because the MIA sponsored said this year seasons can go on without the kids who are participating in the sport without a mask on, which was the case the other day that I attended, I think it's safe to somehow do make the correction the way we've talked about, because it didn't really speak to audiences on school grounds.
Yeah.
Tina?
So I think based on this discussion and just making, taking out those 3 words, I think it clears it up, or at least for me, that we can probably leave it for a couple of weeks and do the second read. I think that was my only concern as just one subcommittee member about the confusion for people, But I think we've cleared it up, and so I think we can wait, a couple of weeks.
So move it to second read
I
for the
think
next
so.
meeting.
That seems to be the consensus.
Okay?
I don't know if Sharon had a different thought, but I think it seems to be the consensus.
Okay. All right. So moving on to superintendent's report.
I will be short. First, I would like to recognize that the Harwich Fund of Cape Cod Foundation for their grant in the amount of $1,500 for musical instrument fees and families in need. Related to that, and I had reported out about that, I think at one of our past meetings, I got this nice email from Mary Oldeck, who was just indicating that she was thrilled to report that we had more students sign up for instrumental lessons than any year before, that there were 31 students and 5 full rental scholarships had been funded for students who had chosen to play the trumpet, cello, and clarinet. And the families were very grateful for the support, and it wouldn't have been able to happen without the Harwich Fund. So thank you very much. I also want to reiterate what Charlotte had brought up in her report. I thought that just the homecoming dance was just fabulous, that that we were able to have that for the students. I mean, there were so many students who who had hadn't experienced something like that at high school because of COVID last year. We didn't have things like a homecoming dance, and I know that there were many of our upperclassmen that were wanting and hoping that there was going to be a homecoming dance, and I thought that the faculty advisors that put that on just did a fabulous job, so congratulations to all. In terms of COVID, again, it's like, don't want to jinx us, but we post every Wednesday on our dashboard the number of current COVID cases that we are tracking, which is zeros across the board in all 4 of our schools. So that's a good place, and let's stay there. We will be starting the weekly COVID safety checks. Last year we referred to it as pool testing. And I know that Joy and the nurses and I have been talking, and Holly Thing has been brought into this to just work out the logistics on it, but we will start that a week from Monday, and we have, I think, about roughly half of our student population is already signed up for it, and I anticipate that we'll see more families elect for it as we go, but again, I think even a higher turnout for it than last year. Just one last quick thing, and a beg and appeal to our Chatham reps, but we have budget season starts on Tuesday, and we have the annual Chatham Budget Forum is Tuesday at 5:30, and I know that at the moment we're a couple Chatham reps, down for various reasons, and we just want to make sure that we have some representation there. I may or may not be back in time for it. I hope to be, but I will have Mark Smith ready with Michael. If I'm not, I have a NASC accreditation visit that I will be at in Rhode Island, and depending when we're released from that will depend on if I make Chatham by 5:30.
Well, you have a plan B, so.
There's a very good plan B.
Excellent. Moving right along. So we have
Madam
one
Chair?
action.
Madam Chair, do you
Sorry?
mind, would it be, may I ask for your permission and maybe the committee's permission to just jump back up very, very quickly to the liaison report? I had something I wanted to squeeze in, if
Of
that,
course.
if that is okay. It's just an announcement.
Yes.
So there's no report. Or just a reminder, first of all, that the MASC conference, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, conference is happening November 3rd through the 6th. I am a delegate, so I will be attending. I'm not sure. I think Sharon might be going as well. I also want to announce that I received word today that I have been nominated for the MASC District, Division 7 as an officer. So my name will appear on the slate at the conference, so if all goes well, I will be one of your District 7 officers. So, thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, it's not yet. I'm on the
Oh.
slate. I received word today that I'm on the nomination slate.
Excellent, congratulations.
So, I'll report on that at the next meeting.
Okay. Any questions? I think I jumped the gun too. Any questions for Dr. Carpenter? Nancy?
I don't have a question, but unfortunately, I'm out of town on Tuesday for the budget summit, so I won't be able to attend that either.
All right, somebody text Jackie.
Okay. So the last thing that we have for an action item is to vote on the volleyball team and coach's salary. So do I have a motion? Scott?
I just want to make, I would love to make a motion on this, but I just want to make one comment. I cannot be more pleased that Karen has found a way to make this happen as a club. When I first came here 9 years ago, I talked with the athletic director and I said, it's like my hope is that we will go and see, lacrosse come to Monomoy, volleyball come to Monomoy, and I think this is the start. and then I'd love to see boys volleyball, and again, any opportunity to get kids involved. And I think one of the wonderful things that Karen mentioned and that you see in the pictures is these are kids who aren't playing other sports, and this is a diverse group of kids that, and again, the more kids that we can get involved in extracurriculars, the more they get invested in their academics, and the better we can help them elevate.
I think it's great. Do I have a motion? Terry?
I would move that we accept with a positive vote to create a Monomoy girls volleyball sport based on the proposals submitted this evening.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Nancy?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Okay. And may I have a motion for
I move to adjourn.
the warrants have been presented. And now I would like a motion for adjournment.
Okay.
And a second.
I move to, okay.
Sharon, was that a motion for adjournment?
Yes, it is.
And a second?
I'll second.
Roll call. Nancy?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I am an aye. And we are adjourned at 7:28 PM.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Night.